Hello, everybody. Welcome to the episode. My name is Urbina. I am your host, founder of Urbina Consulting, and host of the Omnichannel X podcast. I'm here today with Robyn Eastlake. She is a very experienced content and experienced design leader. She has worked at the intersection of creativity, commerciality, technology, and her focus is on bringing together design, product, and engineering functions to build the kind of best-in-class omni-channel experiences, teams, and systems that are required by today's brands. She has been working in the financial market for many years. I actually met her 15-ish years ago, when one of Urbina Consulting's first clients ever, a major bank in the UK, which we had a long relationship with, where I had the pleasure of meeting Robyn and understanding how skilled and clever that she really is. So her current focus is on content design principles and is looking at AI and automated experience design, how to develop content design principles for AI and for automation. So very, very interesting. Yeah, she talks about enterprise content management, CMS, digital transformation, structured content strategy and content modeling, content design and testing, content architecture, design systems, content design systems, governance operations. So all the good stuff that we love to talk about at Omnichannel X. So this is going to be a great episode. We talk about the finance market, which is something we haven't talked about in a while on the podcast. So we got to get a state of the omnichannel world, what's happening with omnichannel and financial, challenges in that space. How do you get to success? Where has Robyn seen success, and how they did those things differently? Also, of course, AI and content. What are people doing right? What are people doing wrong? What are the opportunities there? And some tips on how you can get your initiative started. So I think you're going to find this episode very enjoyable. Let us know what you think in the comments. Get back to us. And without any further ado, I present Robyn Eastlake. Robyn, do you want to introduce yourselves to our audience and tell them a little bit about yourself and some of the roles you've worked in?
Sure, absolutely. So hi, everybody. I'm Robyn. I've worked in content strategy, content design for probably about 15 years. And most of that time I've spent in banking and financial services within the UK. So whether that's kind of retail banking, bits of wealth banking, looking at new propositions, how can we make kind of the topic of money work better for our users, and how can we work with businesses to make sure that our content efforts are connected and omni-channel and kind of meeting all the needs that the business has as well. I've spent a little bit of time in kind of SaaS technology, as well as some startups and scale-ups, but kind of financial services is probably my home ground. So it's awesome to come and talk to you about it today.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, that's actually where we met. Was working at
Absolutely.
yes, when I was a consultant and you were a client back in the day, in one of the big banks in the UK. So for those who don't know my background, I lived 7 years in the UK and did quite a lot of work there, and that's how I managed to meet the wonderful and interesting Robyn. So, Robyn, you've been kind of in the OmniX community for a while. This is your first time on the podcast. I'm so happy to have you. Uh, Give us, to kind of set the stage here. You're one of our first, not our first, but one of our first financial focused guests. So can you give us a kind of your feel of the state of omnichannel in that sector, in the financial market?
I think it's always a bit mixed. The way I always kind of talk to people about it is that it's, in some ways, a very, very broad space for content. There's loads of opportunity and lots to do, but it's also sort of pockets of brilliance. Content moves around a lot in financial services institutions. It tends to struggle to find a home. So I think what I have sort of experienced and observed is that content tends to get brought in for kind of big transformational stuff, or it sits right at the other end of BAU. Finding that spot in the middle can be pretty challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the moment, for trying to kind of create connected experiences, we're in a phase where obviously we've had a pretty turbulent last few years, and financial services had to react really, really quickly. So much like our colleagues in design and other areas, we saw kind of huge boom, get content strategists in, get content designers in. We need to make sure that we can facilitate all the weird and wonderful new financial mechanisms that are going to need to support, you know, countries' populations through just this kind of unprecedented set of challenges. What we now find ourselves in a couple of years down the road is that you've all of a sudden, you're in an institution where you've got lots and lots of people. You don't have quite that, you don't have pressure in quite the same way, but we haven't quite emerged in that either. I think we've gone through the sort of expansion and contraction. I think we're through the contraction bit now, but we're probably still at a stage where, okay, now what do we do? We've all had this great experience that's, you know, been weird and wonderful and terrifying all at the same time. Now we've got a slightly new landscape for what our experience looks like. Our users interact with us in a different way and our internal mechanisms look different. So now where do we go next? And I'm pretty sure some of the things that we'll touch on when it comes to kind of AI, automation, what that means for our business, the kinds of experiences we create, especially as we see new audiences enter the market in terms of kind of Gen Z and the things that they want are pretty different. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity, but I think it's all quite tentative at the moment.
I'm very interested in hearing, well, two things that really jump out from that for me are finding that sweet spot of, no, my organization isn't leading a digital transformation drive with content at the heart of it from the executive, but we're also not the caboose. Kind of being a little bit one of my consultants, Larry Swanson, and also a very well-known podcaster in his own right, says content has always been like design's poorer cousin.
Absolutely.
You know, we're just kind of like, oh, we've got this whole experience we're going to do, and there's going to be some words at some point, maybe a video.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if we're lucky. So and then also the newer generations, you know, we haven't had a lot of people podcast talking to that, and I think it's really interesting. It's come up on a couple of our projects, like how do you up your game or change the game for the next generation of digital citizens. So where what specifically do you see as the biggest challenges to going omnichannel in that space?
I think there are probably a couple of challenges that have been there for a while and probably aren't likely to go away. So I think if you're thinking about either coming into that space, and people that have experience working in financial services I'm hoping will absolutely hear this and feel it in their bones, that every business works to KPIs and goals, and it can feel very short term. And often we struggle as content strategists to ask people to think a little bit more medium to long term. We're asking them to think about investing for a period of time, to be patient.
Yes.
Banking works in the same way, but it works probably more like politics. The life cycles work in the kind of 4 to 5 years, right? So you have your CEO, MD comes in, this is the stuff, this is the direction, let's go. You have your day-to-day churn, but you tend to have that kind of 3 to 4, 5 year window to get something done. So that's, there's a particular challenge around that when a lot of the goals are actually about loyalty. They're actually about long-term customer retention. Acquiring is very expensive in that space. So really what
acquiring customers.
Yeah, acquiring customers in that space is incredibly expensive, and a huge amounts of effort get kind of driven into that. But really, to make that valuable, what you want, the absolute kind of golden fleece of that, is to bring somebody in their kind of as an new entrant into that market. They're 18, they're 20, and you want to keep them. You want to keep them through all of those life stages. You want to, so trying to balance that. We kind of have 3 to 5 years to do this thing, but actually a lot of the metrics we're after are far, far longer than that. It's an interesting space to try to think about connecting parts of the business.
That's very interesting, particularly because, you know, we tout a lot, you know, kind of our mission and what we say omnichannel is about one of my most hated phrases when we all got excited about saying we're all publishers. Yeah, you know, we're just gonna push our stuff out there. But relationship building. Yeah. You know, you're using a number of channels and you're thinking about them across a journey to build a relationship. And on a channel assessment is kind of, for me, figuring out, are you a good relationship partner? Yeah. What are you bringing to the table in this relationship? You know, are you all about yourself? Are you are you a good listener?
Mhm.
Do you remember? Do you grow in these relationships? So I think that it sounds squishy, and it can lean into the most, you know, it can sort of sound like very superficial marketing stuff,
Yeah.
like brand thing, but it's not. It's really asking the real question of how do we use all these channels to sustain a relationship over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the challenge is always, how do you remind everybody in the day to day that that's the goal?
Mm,
You'll tend to have a setup where you have your manufacturing side of the business. So all of the people deciding lending policy and credit rating criteria and all of these kinds of things. And then you have all of your distribution still pretty much is set up by channel. They're not usually pretty well connected. There's an absolute willingness to understand that a connected customer experience is a huge differentiator in that space. Where you have environments where interest rates are what they are, there isn't a whole lot between the blue one and the green one and the purple one, kind of is what it is. Making sure that that users feel valued, they feel valued over time, that they are safe, they're protected, and that the things that are being served to them are appropriate to them. That is a hugely valuable space for businesses, and they want the attention within a business that they pay to their competitors is far bigger than I've seen kind of elsewhere in other industries. It's
mm,
just everything that you do, but reminding businesses that we're in it for the longer term,
mhm,
and actually managing to get into a space where you can start to connect that manufacturing part to the distribution part.
mhm.
Get Just being able to spin those things up can be pretty tough.
When you say manufacturing, do you mean content manufacturing, or do you mean like product design and development?
It's sort of the sort of really traditional banking finance part of the business.
Yeah.
So often what we will be tasked with, if I think about some of the kind of big transformation projects we've looked at, yes, we want to do all of our experience mapping. We want to understand the journey that users are on and the things that they feel and the way that they behave. But
Hmm.
huge amounts of that discovery is trawling through absolutely loads of really, really, really dense policy, really trying to get into the nuts and bolts of how does this mechanism actually work? If I
Hmm.
want the emotional resonance of I want to take out a mortgage because I want to buy a home to protect my family and secure my future, we can design for that. Understanding how you get from we are an institution, we've decided on this product, and that product is going to be set up in these different ways, and all of the thinking that went there, how we can connect all of that so that everybody feels like this is a valuable opportunity to go for,
Mm.
that's the bit that can be
Tricky.
challenging.
Yeah. So and that brings you back to what jumps out of your kind of your first block of thoughts was um it's that middle ground of how do we bring content planning, alignment, messaging architecture. What is the value proposition of this product in terms that the audience is either going to resonate with the audience. What are the priority of those, and how do those messages need to play out across a journey? Having that up front so that it isn't, and that was kind of like the heart of the design of the content design movement.
Mm.
It's we're part of the design team,
Hmm.
so we need to be there when you're thinking about designing this product as early as possible, having content be part of that discussion. Not content like, okay, let's write a blog post, but thinking about messaging architectures and thinking about matching the intended audience of the product with the messages that are going to make that product attractive and interesting and comprehensible to those audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty common to everywhere is the sort of battle cry from content people. Please bring us in earlier.
For the love of God.
I will walk across broken glass to please get into this product earlier, and that's still true.
Yeah.
I think, and we still fight those same battles. You still have well, yes, we need to define the messaging, but actually the core messaging of this proposition we've already done and dusted 6 months ago. We just kind of didn't tell you about it. So can you work out a way to present it? So you absolutely still have the challenge of how do we get out of presentation layer and back into what are actually the kind of structural elements of this proposition that do we actually understand what our users' intent is? We
Yeah.
have all this data as a financial services institution, we have absolutely tons of it, loads and loads of it, but are we realizing any value on that data? So I think one of the things when you're in that space is, who do I find? Who are the people that have the keys to that data? What are they doing with it? And what
Mm.
other stories can it tell me that we're not even looking at just yet?
Yeah. So I have found that I get scared sometimes that our podcast listeners will be scared of me, will be bored of me bringing this up. But I have found that the journey is that thing that if we can the way I'm going to say it differently this time is rather than saying like let's do a journey map to figure out the content, let's look at the onboarding process
Mhm.
and kind of stealthier content requirement journey mapping into that. So I just want to look at, so you've got this product. What's onboarding going to look like, or what does evaluation look like, or what does the comparison process look like, and kind of just call it process analysis. Just trying to understand all this brilliant product work you've done, and then that gives you something that they will be interested in discussing, but will also kind of give you the insights you need to build a more robust content strategy underneath it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the piece around the elements where we've kind of had success, but also the conversations that are really challenging to have, and challenging from the perspective of why is a content strategist talking to you about this, is often around sort of propensity modeling. What is the probability of people that want to take this thing? We still tend to divide our thinking into, here is a whole bucket of people who are already our customers. We can give them some stuff, we can kind of upsell them, and that's great, and they're having a nice time, and we can iteratively improve the experience they have with us and sort of hope they don't leave in the meantime. And then we've got a whole bunch of unknown people. We're not really sure. We kind of know there's a market out there for this because they're currently banking with another incumbent or a challenger bank. That's great. Really, it's the bit in the middle. What we're talking about is all the things that we know, all the kind of people like you modeling, all of that stuff, all of that intent that's sitting there in the consideration phase, in the I kind of want to try out this place because this is my money and I'm super emotional about it. So I'm not just going to move it around every 2 minutes because that's scary. What are the things that are actually going to tip me over into, no, this is the right place for me? And what are the things that are going to frighten me off?
So, what do you feel has been successful? What in those instances? Because you've had a many splendored background with many different types of organizations, big and small. So, what do you think the companies that had success? What did they do differently?
I'm gonna preface this with success is slightly cyclical. So I think a lot of the things that spaces that I've worked in have been those kind of big transformational bits. So we tend to, you've spent a year in the terrifying discovery phase, and then there's a sort of sharp intake of breath when the thing goes live. And as much as you've done your homework and you've mapped it all and you're very confident, there's still oh goodness, is this going to work? Unfortunately, we've had a couple of those where it have. And I think the difference there was, in terms of how we spun everything up, that was really connecting with people. It was really making sure that we absolutely from day one stuck to our guns of, we are doing structured adaptive content, we are going to build you a content model, we are going to embed that in the design system, there is no plan B, that's what we're doing, great. And I think
Yay.
yeah, that can feel pretty difficult, but the way that we kind of navigated that, I think, was that you don't need to, if you go in with, this is all of the complicated stuff that we need to do to make things simple, you will get two reactions. You will get a couple of people that go, oh, that's amazing. And you'll get a whole lot of people go, that's terrifying. We're not doing that. That sounds expensive and challenging. So could you just build us a website? Thank you very much. So probably there's an element of keeping the complexity within the group of people that absolutely need to understand this complexity. And then much like we kind of have our Lego bricks, really, you're kind of showing somebody this part and showing another team this part and showing another team this part. So everybody is pulling in the same direction, but nobody's overwhelmed by kind of the big scary thing.
Yes.
So I think that made a huge difference in just being able to have the conversations to get stuff off the ground. When it came to actually kind of thinking about our audience's intent and the things that they needed our content to do, really, we had to, obviously, as content strategists, we want to make sure that we're producing the right content. That runs counter to this idea that I have a digital experience and it needs to say absolutely everything about my business. It needs to do it. It is a broadcast channel. We're still kind of in brochureware world, as much as we think we're not. We still are a bit. We've got all this literature that sits in a branch, and then we can also send you stuff in the post, and then we'll just PDF it all over the internet. There's still a huge understanding that that's the way that content is and that's how experiences are built. So actually asking people to come with us and say
A huge perception.
yeah, exactly, this huge huge idea that that's how it works, that's the model, and it's great. Really what we were trying to go after in this project was, you have lots of traffic and lots of stuff, but you don't have the right traffic. It's not doing anything. There is no value content. So I think in
Yes.
projects that we did at Aviva, in embedding a structured content model in our design system, in our CMS, and actually kind of in our teams to make that work. And then probably in pockets of the work that we've done in other places has really been about concentrating everybody's mind on the value that content can add, not the volume that we add.
Yes.
So yeah, converting the right people was always a big.
Yes. And you made a thank you. There's a lot in there. But one of my favorites is you alluded to the right traffic. That I remember this. I'm not going to name names, but I remember working on this with very, very, very big banks who were just chasing the clicks.
Yeah,
It was just get up in the morning, see who hit me. And that was it. You got the hits, you did your job, bonus in the box. And that kind of thinking is so destructive for the long term.
yeah, it's spaghetti at a wall territory. It's, if we get our goal, lots of goals are still always around, get a billion people to this
Mhm,
app, get a billion hits to this thing. We're not interested in a million, and we're not interested in 500 million. We want a billion hits to this thing over however long.
mhm.
And that will do, because we know that a proportion of that, we will find some business, they will come with us, and we will make some money. But it's really, really expensive to do. It doesn't create good experiences. And so I think that's where you still end up with this kind of elasticity in sort of the size of teams and businesses' appetite for content strategy, because they see it as, what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're just going to create more and more and more and more stuff. And that's great if they currently have one of their hit a billion clicks metrics, but not if they're thinking more in, like, we need to differentiate ourselves on customer experience. How do we do that? That doesn't,
Mhm.
it's difficult for them to understand, where does content fit in both of those camps.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's difficult to change the mindset. What are we here to do?
Mm.
Are we here to get attention? And it creates a vicious cycle, because if you have this chasing their own metrics, you can throw good money after bad, and spend quite a lot, and then people go, well, content, me. Because last time we really invested in, last time we tried to throw a lot of content at the wall, it didn't stick the way we would have liked. And a lot of content people, if they know what they're doing, are going, yeah, duh. Um,
Absolutely.
that's why we wanted to be more strategic with how we did this. You mentioned structured content, adaptive content. A lot of people, and a lot of the omnichannel X audience, are hearing those words and trying to go there. In terms of benefits, how would you articulate how you said that worked well at Aviva? How would you articulate the benefits from that, so that people can say, not as you said, oh, we want to go adaptive and modeled, because that is like, it's nonsense language to a lot of the stakeholders. So how would you articulate the benefits to try to, how did you articulate the benefits to try to get that supported?
Mm. Um, that particular project and that place of work was really interesting. And I think this is probably something that content strategists come across a lot. You go into a business because the business has bought the thing. We've bought this piece of kit, and it's going to be like field of dreams, and we are going to embed this new tool, and it's going to magically solve all of our problems, and we are going to make personalized, contextualized content. It's going to be super relevant. And there's often a kind of dream everybody gets sold of, you are going to be authoring content on an iPad or via Alexa, and it's going to be amazing, without really thinking about, we don't really have the infrastructure to support this thing. We don't have the content structures to support this. We don't have teams in place to create it who are thinking about content as an asset. They're still thinking about pages and very kind of confined experiences. We don't have understanding within our design teams that can support that at a scale. And technology don't know who we are, who are these people, and why have they come to knock on my door. So that particular piece was really about saying, if this is your goal, if this is about, you want to reduce what you have, because I think we started that project with, I think it was sort of day one, you turn up and they say, we've got a million pages, and we don't have a CMS, and we don't really know what there is. Good luck. And then you feel a bit sick and you have a little cry, and then you go, okay, what are we going to do? So once we kind of had a fair assessment of actually kind of what do we have, lots of digging and back end work of actually what does this experience look like, because no one's really sure.
Mm.
Then it's about, if your goal is really about personalized and contextual, and you don't want to hire 600 content people to try and operationalize this thing, then we have to change the way that we think about content to start with. We're going to have to take a little bit of ownership away from some people who have felt very comfortable with, this is my product vertical and this is my content and this is what I'm going to do, and ask people to really put themselves in a customer experience, ask them to think a little bit more about embedding those goals around contextualization within their department KPIs, and ask us to trust, ask them to trust us a little bit. So to be able to do that, we took the business's goal was always take the highest value piece of content estate that we have. That's where we're going to start, and we're going to hope for the best. We had to, please don't do that. Let's take a really small area where we're not going to cause a lot of trouble. We've looked at our content model. We've looked at our content types. We believe that if we do this experiment over here, we kind of would be fine, but we just show it incrementally. People need to see they needed to see success fast, and how you define that is interesting, but making sure that you feel calm with the idea that it's going to, an experience is going to go live, it's going to crash on day one. That's just going to happen because you've changed everything and everyone's gone, I don't like it, it's terrifying, because we're thinking new design language, new content, new absolutely everything. But showing that, everybody says it, but it is true, unfortunately, showing that success small, get trust you, and then you can kind of start to roll the machine out to other areas of the business. But yeah, getting to that point, that's the difficult bit. Once you've got one out of the way, then you're okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I cannot echo enough how that pressure is there to, okay, well, let's take the crown jewels and experiment on them publicly. And you're just going, what? No, that's exactly where we don't want to be doing our initial experiments on truly innovative processes and new ways of working. It can be very frustrating. Like, no, we want to invest first in this place where it isn't where we're making all our money. It isn't where we're getting all the traffic, and ring fencing something safe, an actual build and test approach, and kind of getting that. We like to say, treat content as a product.
Absolutely.
And so, like, getting to a build and test mentality where this is a safe place for us to have a beta. We're gonna do a public beta, and then we're gonna get feedback, and then we're gonna assess that. Then we're gonna try to do something a bit more 1.0 ish, and that I think that's really great advice. Thank you. Okay, so we're in the home stretch now, so I really want to because I've been working a lot in pharma lately, and kind of healthcare and those kind of things. So I haven't been on a finance project in a while. Finance, content, AI. What have you seen? Thoughts to share? Any experiences? Anyone doing anything interesting? This for me was, I remember back when we met, when we were working together at the bank. We were talking AI then, and people always think that AI was invented 24 months ago, and we're talking about how do we optimize a chatbot, how do we prepare content for AI and algorithms. What's the current state?
I think over the last sort of 6 months or so, I kind of sway wildly between very optimistic and this is a bin fire, what are we going to do? And I think it'll probably stay that way for a little while. I think there are certain barriers to adoption and how we kind of roll AI and automation out that really need solving. We're not going to overcome those quickly. I think when you and I saw one this morning, a response from a chatbot that told an audience that it had children, and everybody kind of went, "Oh, this is crazy." I think, well, yes, but you can kind of understand content, how it got there. But when you try to think, okay, but now we're going to put the same kind of thinking into financial services, it's the certainty that's the problem. We're creating experiences or really down into kind of the details of content design editorial within financial services. hedging your bets is sort of key. The amount of, you will spend months having conversations around may, could, should, might, perhaps, could be suitable for you. Certainty is a problem because it's all about making sure that the user feels in control of that decision making at all times. Whether that's true or not is, you can put things in front of them and you can serve them things in an interesting way. But if we're going to be fair and balanced and actually kind of play by the rules, then making sure that we avoid absolute certainty is critical.
So when you
That,
say absolute certainty, this is are we in the context of users getting generated content?
yeah, I think if
Is
we
that the because that let's zoom back for a second,
yeah,
because there's AI of many kinds. And so there we have a recommendation AI category, like tagging AI, um, so just good old-fashioned machine learning algorithms that are doing personalization. And then we have the new breed of generative, like speaking to you AI.
yeah.
And so I'm getting that you're kind of talking in that space of how can we safely allow something to generate responses for users.
Yeah, I think when a lot of the conversation at the moment is around generative AI, because that's the kind of hot topic, that's the sort of
Yeah,
sexy,
putting it
the
in front of users.
putting it in front of users,
Yeah.
this view that hey, why do we need content people? Why do we need people answering the phone? Why do we need people answering web chat? Well, we can just replace it all with computers. There's a huge school of thought with that, and you can understand
Yeah.
why. Attractive financial proposition, but it's and I think it's the chat around that is probably more terrifying than the reality. I think there's too many barriers to that actually coming in at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it won't. The areas that financial services institutions have for a long time been using algorithms and will continue to do so, and they'll become more sophisticated. It's all around predictability, ranking, probability of purchase, conversion, all of those things. How we leverage and harness all the data that we have, apply that to the experience that users are having, because that's kind of the bit that's missing at the moment. It's we have all the stuff, we can use it to, we don't use it in a particularly nuanced way at the moment.
Leveraging the data to actually do something.
How exactly, how does this start to feel valuable for users?
Yeah.
What is there's still the line of how do you walk right up to creepy but never cross it?
Mm-hmm.
What is the role that content will have in the future in terms of explaining some of that work, how well it does it? I think that's really important if we're going to calibrate trust appropriately with those experiences, because we're going to use so much more of the things we already know about you. And at some point, we're going to have to be really open about the fact that that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then how do we do that in a way that is understandable, is comprehensible by lots and lots of audiences, because we're talking hugely diverse audiences? And how do we create an environment where people can sort of test and play around with that in a space that feels very emotional? My money is an emotional transaction. I don't just go and check my bank account because it's part of my daily routine in the morning. I do it because something's happening. I want to feel good. I want to feel sad. I want to feel prepared. I have all of these emotions I'm bringing to that. So if we are going to, and we are going to be in this space where all of that predictability, the kinds of experiences that we create become more personalized to me, how do we make sure that users still feel in control of that process? They still are in control of their decision making. We're open about that and they feel good about that. The line between I can make my own decisions about my own money, thank you very much, versus I am making decisions because the computer told me to, is really fine. So how we perceive that within businesses, how we operate for that, and how we design for that, I think is a really kind of mixed space. And I'm not sure there's always the smartest people I've ever worked with ever work in some of these businesses. They have to do so much with so little, with lots of, a big scale, legacy tech, loads of complicated stuff going on. I have no doubt, and I feel very optimistic that the checks and balances are in place to make sure that that works right. But we're going to see some clangers along the way for sure.
Yeah, I am still an advocate of, and it's very unpopular because I'm very pro AI. I'm very anti just sticking in front of customers. I'm always trying to get organizations to think, right, okay, there's a million things we could do upstream from that with AI when it comes to planning and insight extraction and drafting customer journey mapping and personas. And there's so many things that we could do to make everything that we're doing with people so much faster and better. If you go straight to how many, heads can we roll by throwing AI at the client directly, that just seems to be the most high risk. Is it high reward? It is probably high reward, but it's high risk, and could be more reward if you had people who you've paid and hired and have experience working with these AIs to accelerate and enhance and multiply their output. Isn't that so much better than just firing them and hoping this new piece of technology will replace them?
Yeah, we play around now with, and have over the last sort of 12 months or so, we play around in teams with how can we make what we do more efficient, without really kind of letting the machine loose on our output in quite the same way.
Yeah.
We've been in the space for a long time now of we understand the experience, we understand the data. Content is information and data all packaged up and delivered in multitude ways that we can't even imagine yet. We kind of have a good idea of what we want to do in that space. It's really, we lose if we start to tip too far into, well, we'll just generative AI all the output. But we've got all of this efficiency that we can create over here. We can go so much faster. We can go bigger. We can change it more quickly. I think, and it's asking people to be in a much more innovative space when it comes to content. We haven't just built content model finished, machine runs, website exists, app exists, everyone's happy. This thing is moving and shifting all the time. Right at the top of this conversation, we were talking about kind of, next generation, and, audiences, particularly in the financial services space, they're coming into a space that is full of challenges, it's full of incumbents, it's full of absolutely different ways to think about money. They're going to think about experiences in a different way, and they're going to ask them to do different things. So any content modeling and structured work that we do, any kind of policies we set, ways of working, frameworks, all of that has to be able to move really, really fast. That's a space that we can absolutely use. The great big mechanism that can process large amounts of data incredibly fast and give me insights. That's what I want. Don't let it write poetry for me. Don't let it do the artistic part of what we do. That's the bit that will always create a value add on top. And so I think we're probably going to see, I have a sense, I like the idea, and I've seen it spoken about a bit, that I think we're probably going to end up with sort of two tiers of content. We're going to end up with the churn stuff, the generative stuff that the machine kicks out and it starts to kind of eat itself slightly. And then stuff that's got humans involved, the real stuff that we're digging and we've really thought about, that's the stuff that's going to become even more valuable.
Artisanal, organic content.
Yeah, but even
farm to table.
Absolutely, even if it is, we are still thinking ultimately about, this is a loan. Is it right for you? Would you like it? There's so much we can operationalize and structure around that. But in a world where we're generating so much more content more quickly than my brain can ever imagine, the stuff that's had a human in it, that's the stuff that's going to make the difference, because the technology evolves, but our brains don't evolve that fast. So how can the people that will win are the ones that can get that balance right, and they can do it quickly, because you've got all of that beautiful, delicious machine learning in the background that's enabling you to do that quickly.
Yes, leveraging the collaboration of human and machine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I actually think about, and the numbers are out. I don't think I've read these out in the podcast yet. I'm going to pull out some numbers. There was one quote. I'm still quoting the business infrastructure lead who worked on the chatbot with us, 15 years ago. And because I remember he said all the efforts they made to optimize the AI for the chatbots, the main thing that moved the needle on success was tagging the source content properly. Prepping your source content. And for me, it's the simple, like it's sort of dropped for me a couple months ago. I was going, so we have an intelligence, and you're going to feed it stuff that a human would have trouble understanding because it's not properly tagged, structured, explained, deduplicated, audited, etc. And then you're going to want that machine intelligence to create better content out of it.
Obviously, right? That's how it works. Yeah.
Exactly. As opposed to, why don't we fix the stuff we're feeding the machine, so that it, makes sense and is deduplicated and properly organized, so that machine intelligence can have a chance of properly reading this stuff. And that, for me, that's just intuitive. But so I got from Sebastian Bubek, who is a senior principal research manager in the machine learning foundations group at Microsoft, and who was saying that they're seeing 1,000% gains in performance when they move from optimizing the algorithm and whacking the AI and kind of coding it and recoding it and smacking it till it gets better, to going, okay, why don't we just give you a proper textbook? Like, we'll index, link, tag, structure each bit of content, and you can read it, and you be a good little student AI, go to Content University, and then come out with your degree, and then you can talk sensibly. And that's where they see 1,000x better, as opposed to literally, he's saying 2 or 3% improvements, trying to garbage in, quality out.
Absolutely. And I think we need so many more of those examples and stories. It's the thing that that's always what you're trying to express, is that like making things simple isn't that simple, but sometimes it is. We're back to that idea of kind of pockets of brilliance. There are kind of teams that get it, and you can sell your kind of, we need to fix the basics of this thing. We just need to, what do we create? How do we create it? How do we structure that properly? Then we can kind of do what we like to a certain extent. We're going to learn so much more. We're going to go so much faster, but that's not the sexy bit. That's the bit that requires some engagement with the idea that content isn't quite what you think it is. And this meeting is not going to run where I'm going to turn up with some delicious wireframes and it's all going to look beautiful and we're going to click through this prototype and it's all magic. It's going through structure and metadata and intent and all of those things that can still feel like a foreign country for content to be in some places. Yes. So I think it's always find the people that are thinking like you, connect with them quickly, and just get on the train. Like you've always said to me, and it always rings in my ears, that like content is a moving train and you just have to get on it at some point. Yes. And that's exactly true for AI. I think for content within financial services, we're going to have to fight sort of harder than ever before, I think, to get in those spaces. Innovation teams, often they're spun up, they sit in sort of war rooms, which is a term I hate, but they sit in, parts of the business that are closed off from everywhere else so that they can experiment and it's all closed. But that's where we kind of need to get in, because I can't have you come up with your experiment and then bring it to me and you want us to apply this to all of our unstructured, messy content that we've kind of sort of had forever. Yes. That way crazy lies.
So there we've come back to the question from earlier. What are arguments that you can make for, we need a content model, we need to tag stuff properly? One of them is, you want all this AI stuff to work. The AI super nerds are telling you, fix your bloody content.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, yes, and getting in touch with those people, which transitions us beautifully to, how can people follow you or get in touch?
Oh, well, you can always find me stalking the halls of LinkedIn on a variously regular basis. But you can find me on ADP list as well. And I'm always happy to chat through any sort of content design, content strategy, content ops issues, or just if you want to have a rant about stuff, I'm here for that too.
The ADP list, I'm gonna check that out. So that's cool. Mentoring is an awesome thing, and I respect the hell out of the fact that you do that. I think that's awesome. So ADP list, you can check that out, and there's mentors aplenty there too. And okay, so any final top tips for people trying to start their initiative? How would you say goodbye? What's your parting shot here?
I think even before we try to figure out what the problem with content is, it's talking to enough people in that business that you are going to come across, and asking them just, what do they actually perceive content as? There will be an ontological problem in that we don't all know what we mean when we say content, and somebody over here will think it's one thing and somebody over here will think it's something else. If you're trying to spin up an initiative in that environment, or you're coming into the business fresh and you're trying to make anything move within that chaos, it's always going to feel tougher than it needs to be. So it doesn't need to be super structured, it doesn't need to take a lot of time, and it doesn't need to be its own taxonomy project in and of itself, but you do need to get a good enough baseline understanding of, what does everybody think that I do? What do I actually do? And how do I set my sphere of influence? This is what we're here for. This is the stuff that maybe we think about in the future, but we don't care about right now. Give everybody a clear proposition of what you do. That's going to make it a heck of a lot easier to find your allies, to find your advocates, to find your detractors. and you're selling that consistent story all the time without without doubting yourself too much, because these are big machines that have been around for a pretty long time, and they're incredibly complicated. So not worrying about the stuff that we don't need to worry about. We'll worry about that in 3 years' time if we can get this stuff working. What's the thing we're doing now? What matters? What value do we add? And that's the story that we tell everyone. That's where I would start always.
Fantastic. Robyn, thank you so much. I really appreciate having you on the show. It was wonderful. I think we're going to have you back sometime.
Awesome. Love to.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, everybody. Remember to like this episode, share it with your friends, and if you're on a platform that supports it, you subscribe and hit that bell. So I'll see you all next time, and have a good rest of your day.